Hello and welcome to another little bit of Batty science. This one is all about distance, and I started thinking about it when I was playing in the February MHC. This was the challenge where we were all trying to get as many villager trades as we could manage, and so I ended up travelling between several villages and set up a central base from which I could visit any of them relatively quickly. However, the thought that was nagging at me was, how far away do I have to be for my villagers to be safe from zombie attack? And this was soon followed by the thought, how near to each village do I have to be to keep the crops growing there? This second one was important because, as long as we had farmers in our villages, trading crops was one of the most efficient ways of getting emeralds. First, a little aside about distance in Minecraft and specifically how far away you can see things. I realised as I began setting up my experiments that things were going to happen outside my range of vision. And it didn't matter how far I set my render distance, I still couldn't see zombies and villagers further than about 60 blocks away, and the violence was taking place further away than that. So I started to look at your limits of vision, where mobs are concerned, and things were not as simple as I'd expected to find. First, I set up a simple lineup of sheep, and it seemed that the furthest I could see them was about 80 blocks. This was a surprise, as I was sure I could only see the zombies and villagers about 60 blocks away. So I set up this busy menagerie, and discovered that most mobs had their own unique maximum distance at which they could be seen. Notice that during this experiment I was standing at a fixed point and that there were mobs at various distances away, so I could note the most distant one I could see and then check exactly how far away it was. I tried a different way of looking at the same experiment, just a single one of each type of mob fixed in place, while I approached them from a distance to see when they first appeared, and I could move away to see when they vanished too. But this was where I started to get very puzzled. In both of the first lineups I had noted that sheep could be seen over 80 blocks away, but now I was suddenly getting only 64 blocks away for sheep. How could this be? This was going to drive me crazy. I thought it might be something to do with block boundaries, or with my overall position in the world, or the direction I was facing, but all of these were wrong. No. It was that tethered animals can be seen much further away than loose animals. I would never have suspected this. The sheep in the first lineups had all been on leads. The ones in the latest were simply in pens. Once I realised this bizarre fact, I could make a list of the maximum visibility distances of various mobs, as you can see here. So, setting visibility distance to one side, how far away do you have to be for a villager to remain safe from a zombie? I set up this experiment. Pairs of zombies and their potential victims penned in but separated by gates which could be opened from a distance by me throwing a lever. I set the pairs up at various distances away from me. I roofed them over so the zombies wouldn't die in the sun, and I also named the zombies or gave them weapons to hold to stop them from despawning during the trial run. Since I would not be able to see any of the pairs in action apart from the nearest ones, I rigged up lights so that I could see when the gates were open. You can of course see the landscape, the fences and the lights as far away as your render distance allows you to. So I threw the switch and was able to determine that villagers 80 blocks away were in danger, but those 85 away were safe. I tried this again several times with my render distance set to short, medium and long, and it made no difference at all. The danger distance for zombies and villagers is a fixed number of blocks and not related to render distance. I tried measuring this again on a diagonal, but seriously weird things started happening. Zombies began to vanish even when they were named. Worse, they would reappear sometime later. Worse still, they would sometimes reappear in a different pen from where they'd started. As near as I was able to work out, given all of this chaos, the danger distance is measured as the crow flies rather than by counting blocks. So basically, if you drew a circle around yourself, then beyond that perimeter your villagers would be safe. To try and pin down the deadly distance more accurately, I set up this special rig, where just one zombie and his victim stand at a fixed location, while I can vary my distance a block at a time and open the gates to see whether any action takes place. As an added visual indicator, I put weighted pressure plates in both sides, linked up to lights to show me whether there are none, one or two mobs in each side. As you can see, this gives an interesting indication when the action starts taking place and when it's all over and two zombies are happily standing on the same pressure plate and nothing's on the other side. From this experiment I was able to hone the deadly distance down to an exact block. 82 blocks is safe, 81 blocks means death for the villager. And just to reiterate, your render distance has no relevance to this. This is a fixed distance away from the player. The next part of the research was to find out how far away from you crops will grow. I set this up by planting several farms at various distances away. I did the planting at night so that the crops wouldn't grow until the morning. Then I waited for the 10 minutes of daylight to pass and went off to check for crop growth at each of the farms. I repeated this with my render distance set to different values and could see very clearly that crop growth is directly related to your render distance. So when your render distance is set to 16 chunks, which is 256 blocks, crops nearer than 256 will grow and those further away will not. If you've got your render distance set to 24 chunks, which is 384 blocks, the same thing again, and so on for every different render distance. Interestingly, render distance being based on chunks is measured in squares around the player, not circles. So farms can be productive even further away from you in real distance terms on a diagonal than they are on the X and the Z coordinates. So the big question was, is there a distance away from a village where the villagers will remain safe from zombie attack but yet the crops will grow? The answer is yes. You have to stay at least 82 blocks away from the nearest villager, but you have to set your render distance above 5 to keep the crops growing. If you're trying to keep equidistant from 3 villages, then it's relatively easy to remain 82 blocks away from all of them, but in reality you're going to be a few hundred blocks from each. So it's essential to check your render distance and set it high enough to keep the crops growing in each village. Finally, an odd fact that I discovered while doing this: as you move away from a tethered sheep, it disappears from view at 82 blocks. This is the same as the safe distance for villagers being attacked by zombies. So it might be possible to use a tethered sheep as an indicator, like a canary carried by miners in a coal mine. A sheep tethered to the nearest point of a village will show you how far away you need to retreat during the night to keep your villagers safe. Who would have guessed that? I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of Batty science, and I hope you've found it useful and enlightening too. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.